UFC 300 was just 2 weeks ago, and we are already back on the pay-per-view bus with UFC 301. UFC 301 is also a regional pay-per-view. It is in Brazil, which means we're going to get a whole bunch of Brazilians. We're going to get some local talent that they're looking to showcase, and we're going to get some really good matchups. We also have Steve Erceg in a main event title fight after only 3 fights in the UFC. A lot of people think he's rushed. He is an underdog, but let's not forget that underdogs have been dominating main events in 2024. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to break down the entire UFC 301 fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and bets. But before I do, let's quickly talk about my Home Alone face and UFC Vegas 91. This is the thumbnail to the recap video. I have a 45-minute video or a 40-minute video, whatever it is, that I filmed immediately after the fights, so you get my raw reaction and recap of that event. We had Alex Perez winning in the main event by finish. And I mentioned underdogs have been dominating this year. We also did really well with the picks, the bets, and everything else, as did the premium member community. These are just a handful of tickets that were emailed, tagged, and tweeted to us from the premium member community. The prize picks absolutely crushed. The safety parlay absolutely crushed. Jacob's underdog lock of the week absolutely crushed. If you want to join these people, unlock all the picks, the bets, the tools, and everything else for UFC 301, just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top. It's only $10 for an entire month. If you were one of the hundreds of people that signed up for UFC 300, you don't need to do anything else. This is already included because we are within a month window of that event. $10 for an entire month. And you're going to get more than just some picks and bets. You're also going to get tools. One of those tools is the line movement tracker. This is going to give you opening odds, current odds, win probability, and line movement for every fighter on every card. I used this for my safety parlay last week. One of the legs of that safety parlay was a little too wide. I didn't like him at those odds. And then as the week went on, I watched the line movement tracker, and I saw his line slowly tighten, slowly get where it was a respectable number that I could use, and then I hit it, and then it started to move again. And that's why I use the line movement tracker while looking at fights that I like, but I don't necessarily love the odds. You're also going to get the detailed data, metrics, and analytics. 38 columns of information that you can interact with on our website. You can sort. You can work your way through. We divide it up into digestible sections, and we also provide the entire 38-column spreadsheet. I use this specifically to find prop bets. My prize picks have been dominating. I have been dominating Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. And that's because I look at this sheet and I make very quick decisions. For example, McCall Figlak at UFC Vegas 91 had a 1.5 takedown line. It took me 8 seconds looking at this data to see this gentleman has never had 2 takedowns in a fight, and it's not going to happen this time. And we hit the under, and that absolutely crushed. You're also going to get the best DraftKings ownership projections in the game. UFC Vegas 91, our margin of error was 2.33%. You compare us to the titans of this industry, the Awesimos, the Roto Grinders, we dominated them. And they're charging $100 for their fantasy breakdowns. We're charging $10 for everything. And that's because we are in the volume business. We have well over 3,000 premium members that have access to the DraftKings ownership projections that will be preloaded into the DraftKings optimizer. A couple of clicks of the button, and all of a sudden you have built yourself one DraftKings lineup. You've built yourself 150 DraftKings lineups. All of this and so much more at WeWantPicks.com. Just click Become a Member at the top for $10 an entire month. If we take a closer look at pay-per-views specifically, I know a lot of you show up here just for the pay-per-views, and I get it. Not everybody can watch every fight every single weekend. The pay-per-views have the big names. The pay-per-views are the draw. You get your buddies together. You do a whole thing. I get it. So if we look specifically at the pay-per-views, they have been very successful for us in 2024. My safety parlay is 4-1 this year in pay-per-views. And the one is definitely UFC 300. And we should all write an angry letter to Jalen Turner. Dear Jalen, why did you walk away from the standing knockout? And why are you a quitter when it got tough? Sincerely, the entire betting MMA community. F off. That's how I would write that letter and sign it. But even with that loss, the safety parlay is a wild success for pay-per-views in 2024, as are the bets. And overall, pay-per-views tend to be very good for us. If we take a closer look at that safety parlay, this is for premium members only. I am 9-1 in the last 7 pay-per-views, returning 6 units of net profit, a 68% event win percentage. That's all events, not just pay-per-views, and a lifetime ROI almost 30%. All of this and so much more. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. You're also going to get more than just myself and that small little red leprechaun that I do the show with. You're also going to get Artem. Artem breaks down not only UFC, but also the PFL, Dana White's Contender Series, and all of the regional shows as well, giving you his picks and bets. We also have the Pick GPT. This is the artificial intelligence. You've heard me talk about the Pick Doctor. The Pick Doctor is a human being that developed this tool. What we've done is taken the tool itself and given it its entire section on the website dedicated to the artificial intelligence. It has been picking at a spectacular accuracy, and what we've done is we've analyzed that data, we've analyzed the picks, we have logged every pick, every bet, and we've found ourselves a couple of systems. These are all in beta. Don't sign up just for the percentage-based system or the zero variance system. These are in beta, and we're learning as we go. But you can follow along, you can see what we're doing, and you can go ahead and find those bets each and every week based off of the artificial intelligence. Everything, $10 a month, no weird, stupid packages, no tiers, no like, oh, you're going to get my DFS stuff for $98. And then for another $240, I'll include the bet. None of that bullshit. $10 a month. WeWantPicks.com. You're going to unlock everything you could ever want or need heading into fight week. And I have chapters in these videos. Every video I do has a chapter or chapters. And the reason is because some people only want to hear about a handful of fights. You don't need to hear about every fight. Totally get it. Other people are already premium members, well over 3,000 of you. So the premium promo, front-loaded, doesn't necessarily apply. So feel free to hop around and use the chapters at your leisure. I'm English now, so we're going to say things like leisure. Opening up the UFC 301 card, we have Alessandro Costa taking on Kevin Borjas. This card is loaded with Brazilians. Obviously, it is in Brazil. We also have a bunch of Brazilians that are in 50-50 fights that are slight favorites. And I think there is some local bias there. In my opinion, a country like Brazil doesn't matter. When you are local in Canada, the Canadians rally behind you. They root for you. That arena is full for the first fight all the way till the lights are shut off. Brazilians aren't necessarily the same in Brazil. Let's not forget what happened to our buddy Glover Teixeira. That dude was one of the best representations that this sport has ever had. Positive, upbeat, fan-friendly, spectacular career, former world champion, retired in Brazil in a main event, and they walked out. They walked out. That dude didn't even get to finish his retirement speech, and that arena was empty. So what you should not do is look at these close fights and then factor in, oh, he's a Brazilian in Brazil. Let's go ahead and... No, don't do that. I know a lot of you love doing that for the Canadian cards and the region. Do not do that. We cannot trust that this fan base is going to get behind their people. Opening up the UFC 301 fight card, we have Alessandro Costa taking on Kevin Borjas. He's not Russian, but Borjas. I mean, that's a Russian last name. Anyway, Alessandro Costa is a solid striker. He has pretty good takedown defense as well. His striking style is just a high, tight guard. He's patient. He'll wait to find his spots, and when he decides to throw, he throws with 100% intent and does a really nice job of small combinations. He will leap in with the left to the body, then a right to the head. He's got very real power, but he can be low volume. He's coming off that decision loss to main eventer Steve Erceg, where they did trade some takedowns, but Steve ultimately had the control. He's taking on Kevin Borjas. This guy's a clean striker who works in combinations well. He'll use everything from straight strikes to low leg kicks, all while plodding forward. He can grapple if he needs to, but more often than not, he will actually let people stand up and avoid the ground completely. For the most part, he is a striker with very nice combinations and mid-level takedown defense. He's coming off a UFC debut loss to Joshua Van, where he did have some success early. I mentioned I think this is a 50-50 fight. Alessandro Costa is the slight favorite on the betting odds, and I think that, honestly, I think that's some local bias. And my little rant before this, that's all you need. I am not leaning into the local bias. With that being said, I am going to pick Alessandro Costa to win this fight, but only because of the wrestling. He's a little too low volume on the feet for me to trust him to just come out hot and look for a knockout. So I can't necessarily trust that he's going to be there headhunting on the feet. I do think he's the more powerful one of the strikers, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be the busier one. But I think the wrestling is going to be the difference. We saw Kevin Borjas have some early success against Josh Van, and then the grappling took over. I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Alessandro Costa is going to work in some grappling, win this fight with a handful of takedowns. I'm not betting on it because I don't trust him, and this is a 50-50 fight, but Alessandro Costa is going to be the pick, and it's because of the wrestling. That takes us to a fraud-checked Bonfim brother taking on Vinc Pichel. And fraud-checked is an interesting term because it's a cool kid term. It's what the cool kids are saying. Cool kids say two things. They say fraud-checked, or cool kids in the MMA community. They say fraud-checked, fraud-checked. He got fraud-checked. Oh, fraud check incoming. And then they say casual. Nobody's cooler than somebody who calls somebody else a casual for having a different opinion. That by far the coolest person. So we have fraud checked Ismael Bonfim taking on Vinc from hell Pichel. And I mentioned fraud check because Ismael Bonfim just got beat by Benoit Saint-Denis. But that's a respectable, I think we all can agree that's a respectable loss. I wouldn't even call that fraud checked. To me, first of all, fraud checked is actually kind of a cool term. People way overuse it. Being a touted prospect and losing a fight, in my opinion, isn't a fraud check. A fraud check is when Walter Walker got fraud checked because he lost to somebody who sucks. You lose to somebody who sucks when you were supposed to dominate, you're a fraud. Ismael Bonfim's not a fraud. He just lost to Benoit Saint-Denis, who's a savage killer. That's not, we don't know if he's a fraud. If he loses to Vinc Pichel, full fraud. Call him a fraud. He's the fraud from Philly. And you'll know who I'm talking about if you've been here before watching some of these videos. Ismael Bonfim's not a fraud. He did lose his last fight to a killer. Style-wise, this guy's a wild striker. He has some very real power. No regard for straight punches. Every single punch is like throwing a baseball. And he comes forward. He'll work in some takedowns. He's got some high-level boxing experience. He's a high-level grappler. All gas, no brakes. He will be in your face, and he will be a pain in the ass to get out of your face. He's taking on Vinc from hell Pichel. Not only does this guy have a sweet nickname, and that's 100% sick. Vinc from hell Pichel, that is a sick nickname. Mustache, I mean, I could do without the mustache. But the nickname is sweet. Not only does he have that nickname, but he also has a pretty fun fight style. He's going to come forward. He's going to stay tough. He's going to stay gritty. He's going to stay in your face. He'll throw some strikes. He'll work in some offensive takedowns. His offensive wrestling is solid. His defensive wrestling kind of sucks, though. Only a 23% takedown defense in his career. And that is surprising because he is very good offensively, but he has been taken down 23 times in the UFC. He himself is coming off a decision loss to Olympic wrestler Mark Madsen about 2 years ago. And this matchup was originally supposed to happen the last time the UFC was in Brazil. And it was canceled. And now it's rebooked. And nothing changes about my breakdown. We have Ismael Bonfim, a killer, a young killer, with aggressive striking, aggressive grappling that's going to come forward and stay in your face versus a 41-year-old that has not fought in 2 years. We could just leave it at that. We could ignore the skill sets entirely and just leave it at that and pick Ismael Bonfim. If we go back to UFC Vegas 91, what happened to the 40-year-olds on that card? I'll wait. They both got finished. Everybody loved Tim Means. Tim Means is a dog. Tim Means, that Dirty Bird's a dog. Dirty Bird's going to come out here. He's going to win this fight. That guy has a dog, and he's going to make a dog fight. Tim Means was unconscious with an uppercut inside of 2 minutes. And that's just because he's old. Too old to be fighting. Same exact thing happened to Ronnie Yaya, except he lasted a little longer, and he was TKO'd standing. Point being, this is not for the elderly. This is a young man's game. And even if Vinc Pichel was not 41 years old, and even if he was not coming off a 2-year layoff, I think skill-wise, Ismael Bonfim has the skills to win this fight. So not only do I think he's the better fighter, he's also younger, faster, hits harder, stronger, all of those things. Ismael Bonfim is the pick. And if you want to bet on him, you need to do it now before the odds take off. We have already seen a bunch of line movement on this card. So make sure you jump on that and you get it in before things start moving. I have a feeling that a lot of these favorites that we like, a lot of these favorites that we're going to parlay, a couple small parlays, they're all going to be minus 600, minus 700, minus 800, and it's not going to be reasonable. So make sure you get your stuff in early this week. If you're a premium member, click on your account tab on the website and then click link Discord. At the very least, even you don't need to be in the Discord talking to people. At the very least, you will get an alert on your phone when we place bets. I put up my premium member safety parlay a few days ago. The odds have already moved. It's still reasonable. It's still good, but the odds have already moved a little bit. We're going to see some movement today on Sunday. We're going to see a whole bunch of movement come Tuesday, and then a ton of movement come Friday. That's typically how these things trend out. So make sure you link your Discord. You get the alerts on your phone so you don't miss. If you don't like the bet, no big deal, but at least you saw it before it went away. Then we have an extremely high-level #1 contender fight in women's MMA. We have Dione Barbosa taking on Ernesta Kareckaite. And I get it. People think I'm like super fat and short. I'm not that fat, guys. I'm not short either. I'm 6'3", 250. But then I come on here and I pronounce last names and I insert the word cake for no reason at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, I probably need to make a couple of different life choices. And then maybe, this shirt's a medium. Come on, guys. Fat? I don't think so. But I should make better life choices. We got Dione Barbosa taking on Ernesta Kareckaite. We're just going to say Ernesta. Dione Barbosa is a solid grappler. She is going to throw tight strikes. She is going to look to get it to the ground. She is a judoka, meaning she is a judo practitioner. So instead of shooting shots up the middle, instead of working wrestling takedowns, she's going to look to tie you up into a clinch and then get a trip or a throw. Her striking is not great, but she is fast, and it is enough to set up the clinch. She's coming off a short notice win on the Contender Series. She's taking on Ernesta. Ernesta is a solid striker with great footwork. She's got fast hands, solid head movement. She throws punches in combinations instead of one at a time, and she could dance her way to a win. She does not have a ton of power, so typically she needs to fight a perfect 15 minutes. She is long, and she uses that length well for striking, but not defending takedowns or working her way back up. She, too, is coming off of a Contender Series win. And if you're betting on this fight, at these odds, you need help. You likely have a problem and you need help. I can't help you. I, too, have a problem, but you should not be betting on this fight. This is a ridiculously low-level women's MMA fight that I am shocked isn't a UFC Vegas main event. Shocked. This should be UFC Vegas 92 main event. Barbosa versus Kareckaite. Dione is sitting at -210 right now. She's a -210 favorite right now. And if you're positive she's going to get the takedowns, I guess that makes a little bit of sense. But I don't know how you can be positive about that. When running through tape, you'll see that she can at times struggle closing distance. She can struggle getting fights to the ground. Ernesta is the better striker. Dione is the better grappler. I typically lean grappler in those situations because grapplers can control where the fight goes. If they want to keep it standing, they'll keep it standing. If they want to get it to the ground, they can get it to the ground. Ernesta has struggled to get up in the past. She's not dangerous enough to end this fight on the feet, so Dione's going to be the pick, but for the love of God, save your money. We have 14 fights on this card. I don't even think the round line is worth touching. Maybe over 2.5, but even then, Dione Barbosa could potentially get a submission here. So I just leave this fight alone. I'm shocked this is on a pay-per-view. Shocked. Then we have Jacob Lyons taking on Mauricio Ruffy. This is a fight where a ton of people are on one side. If you go to Tapology and you look, 75% of the people are picking Mauricio Ruffy to beat my ginger podcast partner. But I don't necessarily know that's exactly what's going to happen here because Jamie Mullarkey is a jack of all trades. He's pretty good at everything. He's not great at anything, so the term is jack of all trades, master of none. He can wrestle. He's got almost 3 takedowns per fight. He can strike with 2 knockout wins in the UFC. But he just can't seem to put it together for the big fights. He's a well-rounded guy who is tough, but not particularly dangerous. He's primarily a grappler, but has been more active in the striking the last couple of years. He is coming off the knockout loss to Nasrat Haqparast. He's taking on UFC newcomer Mauricio Ruffy. This guy is a nasty striker with big fight-ending power. He has 9 wins with 9 stoppages. He'll throw heavy 1-2s while looking for power. He isn't just a boxer, though. He will launch kicks right up the middle, and he will defend takedowns really well. His most recent fight went to the 3rd round, which I like to see because we got a glimpse of his cardio. And while it wasn't spectacular cardio, we do know that he is not going to death gas in his fights. Think Karolina Silva at UFC Vegas 91. I love that fight went the distance because we got to see somebody with all finishes what they look like later in fights. We got a little taste of that with Mauricio. If you quickly look at this matchup and you quickly make a pick, I get it. You will lean the Ruffy side because Jamie can be put out and Ruffy puts people out. It's literally that simple. This, however, is a tremendous step up in competition for Ruffy. It is also a tremendous step up in stage. This guy has 10 total fights in his career, and he went from fighting on the Contender Series 6 months ago to a pay-per-view card in Brazil. The lights might be too big. The crowd might be too loud. The pressure might be too big here. The leap up here is absolutely incredible. We just don't know how he's going to react and what's going to happen. And until then, I have to work off of skills alone. This guy might shine in the spotlight, or he might just do literally nothing and stand there looking foolish. So I just have to work off of skill sets alone. And skill sets alone, I'm going to have to go with the powerful striker that can defend takedowns. I don't love it. But I think Mauricio can defend the takedowns. We've seen Jamie Mullarkey knocked out a couple too many times in the last year. And I think Mauricio Ruffy can do the same. That is why this is the matchup in Brazil. I mean, they don't do these matchups by accident. They said, here's a young killer that's got some good power. He's actually the older fighter in this matchup. When I say young, I honestly just default to young when it's a UFC debut. He's older. But here's a killer with some very real power, and the UFC loves these strikers lately versus a guy that can get knocked out that has somewhat of a name. I'm going to lean the Ruffy side. The only bet I would even consider is potentially Ruffy by knockout, because that's the only way he's going to win this fight. But those odds have to be good. If his money line is minus 180 and then the knockout line is minus 170, just leave it alone. That's not worth it because, again, huge step up in competition and stage. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen here. Then we have Joaquim Silva with his sucked in cheeks and pouty lips taking on Drakkar. I mean, Joaquim Silva's looking at me like no thanks. Like we are at a club called the Dirty Piston. This guy's just staring at me right now. Like, we're good, dude. I'm just here to support my friend. I'm not here for the clientele, if you get what I'm talking about. Like chill, Joaquim. Chill. Just chill. He's taking on Drakkar Klose. Joaquim Silva is a BJJ guy, but he does have fantastic power in his hands. He's very explosive. He's always looking for the knockout. Even though he has that BJJ black belt and is more than capable on the ground, he's not typically attempting takedowns. He's mostly looking to strike. He obviously had a couple of takedowns in his last fight, but again, you go through the fight history, you look at that stat sheet we give you for premium, you'll see that's not typically what he's doing. He's had so much power that he is live in every single fight he's in. In fact, you go back a couple of fights, you remember he had Arman Tsarukyan on ice skates for a few minutes there. He was losing the fight, cracked Arman. Arman was like, obviously Arman put it together and won that fight, but point being, the power is there, and Joaquim Silva can very quickly turn a fight. He is coming off that close win over a 106-year-old Clay Guida. He's taking on Drakkar Klose. This guy's a very good wrestler who has developed striking. He was a state champion wrestler in high school who uses his wrestling offense pretty well, but does have some issues defending takedowns. He's got solid boxing with power and speed. Overall, he's a well-rounded guy who can go the distance or finish a fight. He's coming off a win over Joe Selecki, where he was in an armbar and he babooshed, slammed his way out of that thing to get a knockout. And when breaking down this fight, I had it in my head. In my head, I'm like, Joaquim Silva is 40 years old, and Drakkar's probably 32. That's not the case. Drakkar Klose is actually the older fighter in this matchup at 36. And even though I ranted and raved earlier that this is a young man's game and old, a little too old to be fighting, I think 36 is fine. It's a very steep drop off once you hit 38. But I think 36 is fine. I don't think the age is going to matter here because Drakkar should be more technical. He should be faster. He should be more rounded. Silva will certainly be live with that big power, but Drakkar is a durable guy with multiple paths to victory, so he has to be the pick. He's minus 190. I think that's fair. I think those are fair odds for this matchup. Drakkar Klose is a guy that you can trust. My one little caveat here is, let's not forget, a few years ago, Drakkar Klose was shoved at the weigh-ins. Shoved at the weigh-ins. I think it was Jeremy Stevens that did it. And it actually tweaked his neck. He has said he's never been the same. His neck still hurts. He still has issues. He had to take a long layoff. We have seen him fight since then, and he doesn't look any different. But who knows? He literally, I'm not even being sarcastic, he could develop arthritis or something weird, and he could start to lose some movement there. We haven't seen it yet, but as he gets a little older, there could potentially be issues there. But Drakkar Klose is going to be the pick. Then we have a Jean Silva taking on William Gomis. William Gomis looks like, I don't know why I'm breaking that. William Gomis is looking at us like he put a whoopee cushion on your chair and he's just waiting for you to sit. Like, just such an innocent, like, I have a prank for you. Look at this guy. I'm about to pick him too. I might need to change that. I might need to change. I didn't look at him, but I might need to change the pick based solely off the look. I'm about to pick William Gomis, and let me tell you why. Yes, he's taking on João Silva, who is a very powerful striker. He's loose, he's creative. The creativity is fun to watch, but it does get him into weird positions at times. He'll go from a tight guard to hands down and loose. But he does alternate between the two often enough to keep people guessing. He lowers his level to land body shots and then comes up top with big power. His takedown defense is solid, and his striking is killer. He's coming off a UFC debut win over Weston Wilson. A UFC debut win over future world champion Weston Wilson, where he did showcase his power and accuracy. He's taken on William Gomis. This guy's a very well-rounded fighter with a smirk that you would die for. He can knock you out, he could submit you, or outwork you. It is hard to label him as any one thing because he is genuinely good everywhere. He's got solid Muay Thai striking and a very opportunistic grappling style where he can snatch things up in scrambles. The issue with Gomis, as with many French savant-style fighters, is that they are low volume and they hang out on the outside. He is coming off his first finish win in the UFC over Yanis Gomori. And I'm going to be honest here. I hate that French savant style. That's the name of the style that they fight. I hate that style. And the only reason I know that is we were at a function. We had a function at our house, and one of the people who attended is a very well-accomplished professional fighter. And we were talking about this. This was after UFC France or UFC Paris. And I was like, all these French people fight the same. And he was like, yeah, that's the savant style. So that's what it's called. He broke it down. And that style is boring as shit. That is like the don't overcommit. Don't be aggressive. Stay on the outside. Stay technical. It is not easy on the eyes, that fighting style, but it is effective. And this is a tricky fight to pick because there's not enough tape on João Silva to know exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. Obviously, he just smoked Weston Wilson, but I think there's tiers to this. For him to win here, he needs to keep this dirty. He needs to charge forward, stay in Gomis's face, make it a sloppy dogfight, and don't let William Gomis be technical on the outside with that ridiculous smirk. But I'm not sure that João Silva is going to do that. I'm actually going to pick Gomis here because he is so technically sound. And he does a really good job making these fights boring as shit. He has only been hit with 1.49 significant strikes per minute. That is an insanely low number. He does have a little bit of power. He can avoid the power here. I think William Gomis can dance around the outside and bore us to sleep, but work his way to a win. William Gomis opened as the favorite. He was bet to a dog here. The trend is against my pick. But I think people saw João Silva's got big-time power. They know William Gomis is sort of a boring, slow-paced fighter, and they're betting on João Silva. But I'm going to lean the Gomis side. I think the opening odds were more correct than the current ones. So that's the side that I'm going. Then we have Elves Brener taking on Myktybek Orolbai. And Elves Brener, I already see it in the Discord. I already see it online. People talking about, can you believe Elves Brenner's a dog? Elves Brenner's going to win this fight. Can you believe it? They did it again. Elves Brenner's a dog again. Listen, I'm not buying it. I understand with Chepe Mariscal, same narrative. They keep making him an underdog. He keeps winning. He keeps winning. So I get that. But Chepe Mariscal hasn't fought somebody that was like as insanely dominant as Myktybek Orolbai. Elves Brener is going to lose this fight. And let me tell you why. He is exciting. He is coming off back-to-back knockout wins with his hands. And that is going to trick you into thinking that he's a striker. And he's not. He certainly is a grappler. He does have a loose striking style where he's basically just buying time, trying to avoid being hit. He'll throw some big power and try to work in some grappling. His goal is typically get you against the cage so he can get it to the ground. He's going to throw bombs in the pocket. He's athletic enough to mix in kicks and spinning techniques. And if he is able to get it to the ground, he's very dangerous. He's coming off his second knockout win in a row to improve his UFC record to 3-0. He is taking on Myktybek Orolbai. That is how you pronounce it. And I'm looking at my notes. You can probably see with my eyes. I wrote it out phonetically. And that's what we do here. I'm not just going to, what am I going to make up last names and add food for no reason? No. We listen to how John Anik says it. And we write it down phonetically so that I'm here, professional, ready to go, never stumbling over my words, never messing up a name. And that is the difference between us and every Tapology dork out there. And when I say Tapology dork, I'm talking about the people that are over here trying to sell you something, but they don't even put the time and the effort in to make custom graphics. How are you going to sell somebody a product when we can see your product? We see your videos with our own eyes, and all you've done is pull up Tapology. No extra step, no extra information. You did the bare minimum in your video. I have to assume you're going to do the bare minimum with your premium offering. Us on the other, look at these graphics. Do you know how long this is? Do you know how long it took me to adjust these graphics? So if you go back a couple of events ago, the background behind the fighters usually was just the city they were fighting in. And I thought that was pretty good, pretty clever. Obviously, all the data on the screen, that's the data, spectacular data. But I added the official UFC background. This background behind these fighters, this is the official UFC background that they're using for this event. I also added the logoed scroll at the top. It took me like 2 hours to get this going, because the official UFC background's loaded with text and pictures and all that other bullshit. I removed all of it, and now we have this beautiful graphic. I'm sorry, I just praised myself for about 2 minutes here. I apologize. Don't leave an angry comment. I'll get back to the breakdown. Myktybek Orolbai is a fun grappler who will entertain the striking before fully committing to the wrestling. His striking is a bit stiff. It is wide and he can be hit, but his wrestling and grappling pressure is non-stop. He's got plenty of cardio, plenty of power, a good chin, which is important in this matchup, and he can set a nice pace. If you check out his only loss, it was a competitive fight where he never stopped coming forward. He couldn't get the wrestling going. That's why he lost. But you could see that he continued to move forward, never quit on himself, and tried to implement his game plan. He's coming off that UFC debut win over Uros Medic, where he had 7 takedowns and a submission. Uros Medic just retired a gentleman last night. Unconscious uppercut. And Myktybek Orolbai blew through him, was never in any danger. The striking didn't matter. And that is important here. I told you, I'm seeing everybody loving on Elves Brener as a dog. I disagree. We cannot forget that he is a grappler. And yes, he does have some power in his hands, but he is a grappler. And that point is, I don't think he's technical enough to piece up Orolbai. If Uros Medic couldn't piece up Orolbai, couldn't land that uppercut, couldn't keep the fight standing to get the striking going, Elves Brener's not going to either. Of course, this is a fist fight in a locked cage. Of course, Elves Brener could knock out Orolbai. But we have to work on the what should happen. And I don't see that happening. I think Myktybek Orolbai, or actually Myktybek Orolbai, is going to come forward, get the takedowns, and do what he wants to do. The Elves Brener underdog train, I think, officially stops in Brazil. That was sweet. Dude, that was sweet. The UFC should take, let me say it again, and then let's hope the UFC clips it and they do it in the promo video. Here we go. The Elves Brener underdog train officially stops in Brazil. Doof, 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 doof. UFC 301. I should be a producer. Then we have Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Iasmin Lucindo. Karolina, also old. She's also an older. 38. But she is on a 4-fight win streak. She completely reinvented her career. But she's taking on somebody significantly younger than her. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, very good, established fighter who we thought her best years were behind her. But she's in the midst of a career resurgence. She's a very good kickboxer. She's got solid technique and grit. She averages almost 6 significant strikes landed per minute and has maintained a solid 74% takedown defense. She has found herself on a 4-fight win streak after a 4-fight skid. She was about to be cut. It was shocking she wasn't cut. And then she changed some things up, made some adjustments in her life, focused 100% on American Top Team and training, and they have built her up to where she is now. She's coming off a straightforward win over Diana Belbita, where she did go 1 for 6 in takedown attempts, but she controlled the striking. She's taking on Iasmin Lucindo. She's a grappler who uses her power to clinch and drag her opponents to the ground. Once on the ground, she's got solid top pressure, where she uses that to strike you and loosen you up before transitioning to submissions. Her striking is just okay. She essentially waits for you to throw, and then she counters and rushes in looking for the takedowns. Her game plan is always to get on top and control the fight from there. She's coming off that submission win over Poliana Viana, Alex Pejeda's girlfriend. In a tree. My gut reaction, of course, was, local fighter. 16 years younger. Far more dangerous. That's the gut reaction. Iasmin Lucinda is 16 years younger. She is the Brazilian that they probably want to win, and she's also way more dangerous than Karolina. But I do have some concerns with the decision-making and the overall skill set on the Lucinda side. Iasmin should absolutely be able to get this to the ground and win. But as we saw in her loss in Iasmin Yaryui, if she cannot get takedowns, she's a little bit clueless. There's no way she can win a striking match. Just no way. I am going to stick with my gut here, though. I am going to pick Lucinda to win, but the minus 330 odds, they're just a little too rich for my blood. Karolina Kowalkiewicz has defied the odds a few times already. Iasmin Lucinda, in all likelihood, drags her to the ground, potentially finishes her, and wins this fight. But if she can't drag her to the ground, she's going to look pretty foolish, and Karolina's going to run away with it. Iasmin Lucinda is the pick, but please be careful. Then we have Joanderson Brito taking on Jack Shore. Joanderson Brito, one of the more exciting guys in the division. Jack Shore, one of the palest guys that has ever stepped foot in an octagon. I did not adjust this graphic. That is Casper the Friendly Ghost. That is. Have you ever seen the movie Powder? This is Powder. Powder from the movie Powder grew up, changed his name, and is now 17-1 in MMA, and he's fighting Joanderson Brito. You will need to wear sunglasses watching this fight. So please be careful. Dim your iPad, dim your TV. Just be careful watching this fight. I don't want anybody to burn their retinas before what is actually a decent main card. But we got Joanderson Brito. This guy is a fast, athletic grappler with solid top pressure and a wide array of submissions. His striking isn't very technical, but he will come forward and he will throw bombs. He's got big, wide punches and heavy kicks with almost no regard for what comes back his way. But even though he is comfortable striking, he will look to get it to the ground and work from there. He averages almost 4 takedowns per fight, but he can be taken down if you pressure him. He's coming off that submission win over Jonathan Pierce, where he was challenged to get up, and then he did, and then he submitted that bum clown, Jonathan Pierce. He's taking on Jack Shore. Jack Shore is a pretty good grappler himself. He likes to move forward. He's constantly looking for a takedown. Both his wrestling and striking are similar forward pressure styles. He works in kicks nicely and is all around a very solid fighter with a solid striking differential and himself with almost 4 takedowns per fight. He's coming off a submission win over the no longer in the UFC, Makwan Amirkhani. Brito is a 2-1 favorite. I get it. Go watch his knockout of Chepe Mariscal. That was one of the most devastating knockouts we've ever seen. So I get why Joanderson Brito is a 2-1 favorite. But it does feel a little bit like a trap. Brito is absolutely the more dangerous fighter here. He certainly has the striking power, but he can also be taken down. Jack should be a good enough grappler to not make the same mistake that doofus Jonathan Pierce made. But I'm not sure he is as good of a wrestler as Jonathan Pierce. At least takedown-wise. Anybody is better than Jonathan Pierce in controlling a fighter. This fight is much closer to 50-50 than it is to 2-1. I can't bet here. I am going to pick Joanderson Brito because the striking is spectacular. The danger is spectacular. But he's got a 50% takedown defense. That means half the time you try to take him down, you will. And if Jack Shore can avoid the power on the feet and work in some takedowns, he could absolutely get it done. I am going to pick Joanderson Brito because of the danger, because of how scary he is on his feet, but I'm not going to bet on Joanderson Brito. I don't know why it feels like a trap. I mean, watch him just spark Jack Shore, but I would rather have not bet on somebody that I thought was going to win and they did than bet on somebody and then they lose. So I'd rather just play it safe here. And guys, before we hit the main card, let me send you $50. All you need to do is go to wewantpicks.com/bets, sign up using our links, make a deposit, and we send you $50 as a thank you. It's affiliate marketing. You're going to sign up using the link. You're going to make a deposit. They're going to pay me a commission, and I'm going to slice off that one-time piece of commission and give it right back to you. $50 to you. I get some money. You get some money. Everybody wins. We do the payouts about once a week. All you need to do is use the link, sign up, and you will get paid. And then also, you should become a premium member. Let's take a look at that safety parlay. We're doing good, baby. 2 out of 3. I hit 2 out of the last 3 safety parlays, and the only reason I lost the UFC 301 is because it turns out Jalen Turner's a quitter. We all just found that out at the same time. Either way, I am 9-1 in the last 7 pay-per-views. It does hit at an almost 70% event rate. It does hit at an almost 30% lifetime ROI. The long-term success of the safety parlay is absolutely unmatched, and you can unlock it right now for UFC 301. I do have a 3-leg safety parlay for you ready to go. We have a pretty good main card for UFC 301. We have a couple of matchups that are certainly wide on the odds, but should be very fun. This is one of them. We have Paul Craig taking on Caio Borralho in the UFC 301 main card opener. Paul Craig is at his new home of 185 pounds. He is a very dangerous grappler. He has proven to us more than one time that he can be tough, and he's never out of a fight. There's more than one fight where his face was getting smashed in. You can see that nose. His face was getting smashed to smithereens, and then he managed to pull off a come-from-behind victory. Essentially, if he has any room to grapple with you, you got to be careful. You got to worry a little bit. His striking is just okay, but he does have a little bit of power. Not great, but he does have a little bit of power in there. His biggest issue is that his takedowns are not necessarily good enough, so he has almost no control of it. The fight is going to stay standing or be on the ground, even though his BJJ is dangerous. He can be finished on the ground, though. We just saw that with Brendan Allen. But overall, Paul Craig can be a dangerous guy, a sneaky guy that you can't necessarily sleep on. He's taking on Caio Borralho. Caio Borralho is one of the more under-the-radar prospects right now. He's got a bunch of fights in the UFC with a bunch of wins. But he is tricky to break down. He's a very slick grappler. He's got solid submissions, well-timed takedowns, a long stance, almost a karate style, with very loose feet where he will bounce around and then explode into double legs. He has belts in both judo and jiu-jitsu, and he uses all of those techniques in his fights. Caio is quickly becoming a contender at 185 pounds, but despite how dominant some of these wins are on paper, they are closer than they appear. He's coming off that decision win over Abus Magomedov, where he had a knockdown and only attempted one takedown. Caio Borralho continues to win fights, but I don't know what, there is just something about him that makes me nervous. I have no idea what it is because he showed us good grappling. He showed us good striking. He showed us good wrestling. He has showed us cardio. And maybe it's just the free spirit across the neck. Maybe I just can't fully trust somebody that said, let me tattoo free spirit across the front of my neck. But I don't know why. He just makes me nervous. Luckily for my nerves, Paul Craig is overrated. Paul Craig absolutely can be finished as he has many times before. He can be outgrappled. He can be outstruck. Yes, he is dangerous, and he has pulled off more than one come-from-behind victory, including over the number one contender at 205 pounds. But Caio Borralho is going to win this fight. He should dominate here. He should finish Paul Craig. Let's wait for the props to see what juice we can get going. But Caio Borralho is going to win this fight, and I think he absolutely is parlayable. Then we have Michel Pereira at his new weight class of middleweight. Paul Craig came down from 205. Michel Pereira came up from 170, and they're on very different career trajectories right now because Michel Pereira has looked absolutely spectacular at 185 pounds. He is fighting potentially the lowest level opponent he has fought at this new weight class in Ihor Potieria. Michel Pereira is a capoeira fighter. That's that Brazilian dance fighting, the constant movement, the flips, the kicks, the spins, the punches. For the majority of his career, he was a very large 170-pounder who struggled to make weight. And that's why he moved up to middleweight at 185 pounds. Now he is looking for his third win at his new weight class, even though he has 41 professional fights. I'll pause to let that sink in. This gentleman has 41 professional fights. He is only 30 years old. He's got plenty of career ahead of him. He is unbelievably talented. He has looked better than ever at this new weight class, and he is coming off the absolute destruction of McCall Olenjachuk. He's taking on Ihor Potieria. This guy is a very good striker. He's got a loose style. He's got solid power, good accuracy, but he can be hittable because he keeps his hands so damn low, and he does rely on his chin, which doesn't always hold up. His takedown defense is not great, but he does do a good job of trying to make you pay on the way in. He's very dangerous, but also very finishable. He's coming off his first decision win in the UFC over prospect Robert Erceg, where he looked busier and more confident than he has ever looked. This is a bit of a short notice step up for Ihor. He was scheduled to fight at UFC Saudi Arabia in June, but he jumped in here when Pereira's original opponent dropped. Ihor is going to be the more technical striker. He is a technical striker. but it's not going to matter. Michel hits too hard. He's too fast. He's too creative. He's too good of a grappler to lose this fight. Michel Pereira is the pick, and he probably wins by finish. Then we have Anthony Smith. I think we just saw Anthony Smith knock out Ryan Spann at UFC Vegas 91, but here he is with a quick turnaround taking on Vitor Petrino. This is supposed to be a changing of the guard fight. That's why they set this up. Who can Vitor Petrino fight that is a name that he can beat, that we can build up as a prospect? And they said Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is good. He's a striker with fantastic hands and solid kicks. We also know he's very good at jiu-jitsu. He's got submission wins over several actively ranked fighters. He's incredibly tough and arguably too tough for his own good. If you remember, Glover Teixeira knocked the teeth right out of his head, and he just picked him up, put him back in, and continued on his day. He has taken way too many beatings in his career, though. He is at a weird point where he is well past his prime. He is focusing on his desk career, which he should be doing. MMA is a very unforgiving sport. You could put it all out there. You could be a fan favorite. You can do everything possible to entertain the fans, do right by the UFC. You get a little older, you lose a couple of key fights, and then you lose your job, and you have no way to make money other than getting bashed in local regional promotions. It's a miserable sport. And I genuinely feel bad for a lot of these fighters that put it all out there for us and don't get the long-term love. It's the only truly professional sport that's mainstream that you can build an entire career in, be one of the best in the world for a period of time, and then leave it with nothing. It's actually crazy. There are mid-level to low-level baseball players that have generational wealth hanging around for 10 years. And then you get some of these fighters, this isn't specific to Anthony Smith, but then you get some fighters that do well, have solid careers, but they don't ever just become giant fan favorites. Maybe they don't communicate as well as they should, so they can't transition to the desk job. They don't get the huge sponsorships, and then they're just sort of stuck fighting in regional promotions until it's too late. Either way, Anthony Smith is at a weird point in his career. He's doing the correct thing in focusing on the next step. He's good at the desk. He hangs out at the desk. They're paying him to do that. He's working into his anus clear. He's doing all the right things there. And he recognizes I'm probably a little older. I'm a little slower. I can't necessarily do the things that I need to do inside the cage. He is coming off that knockout loss to Khalil Roundtree. He's taking on Vitor Petrino. This guy's a monster. He has a big left hook. He's a dangerous striker. He's evolving into a grappler. He has 15 takedowns in his last 4 fights. His takedown defense is just okay, but he does a nice job working his way up and avoiding danger. He's very green still, but he is evolving as a fighter and learning more every time he steps into the cage. He's going to be a problem for a lot of people, but he does need to button some things up. He's coming off a decision win over Tyson Pedro, where everybody thought he was going to finish Pedro, but he went to a decision. But it was obvious that he's not technical in that fight, but it was also obvious that he has heart, he has cardio, and this dude is a physical specimen. And you could argue that Anthony Smith is on a 4-fight losing skid right now. I don't think he beat Ryan Spann. I do not think he beat Ryan Spann. He had 3 losses, the Spann win, and then just a loss. No, 2 losses, the Spann win, and a loss. I think it's 4 in a row. I think he lost to Ryan Spann. He took a ton of damage in that fight and he was almost finished. But he's just so damn tough, he gutted it out. And that matters here because Petrino is bigger, stronger, younger, faster, but not the better actual fighter. The skills are squarely in the Anthony Smith side of things. Anthony Smith is the better fighter in this matchup technique-wise. But we have reiterated many times over, this is a young man's game. And while Anthony Smith isn't at the 38-year-old sort of cliff point, he has been through so many wars, he's aged beyond his actual birth years. I do think Petrino wins here, but we could get a zombie-style performance from Anthony Smith where he just won't go down and somehow outlasts Vitor. Highly unlikely that happens. Vitor probably gets his first win over a ranked opponent here. So Vitor Petrino is going to be the pick, but this is a perfect evolutionary step up in competition for Vitor Petrino to find out how good he actually is. Then we have the co-main event. It's a weird co-main event. We have Jonathan Martinez, who's fun and exciting, versus Jose Aldo, who's an all-time great. But let's not forget, Jose Aldo retired 2 years ago. He left the sport 2 years ago. And then now he's back for a co-main event at home. And the question is, does he actually want it? Is he just in this because The UFC's like, hey, we need a little bit of star power. What's your deal? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Good paycheck. It's at home. Why not? Or is Jose Aldo regretting the retirement and he's seeing what Merab is doing out there and saying, I can win this division. It's Sean O'Malley. I can beat Sean O'Malley. We don't know. And we're going to find out on Saturday night. But we got Jonathan Martinez. This guy's a well-rounded guy with technical striking and slick BJJ. He has a Muay Thai striking style with really nice kicks that he uses to control range. He doesn't go to his wrestling often, but when he does, he has slick submissions that he snatches up in scrambles. He's coming off that Jose Aldo-style leg kick finish over Adrian Yanez. He's taking on Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo, in my opinion, is the greatest 145-pound fighter of all time. He's coming out of retirement for this co-main event. He was the longtime champion. He's good everywhere. He's got great counter striking, very technical Muay Thai, great BJJ, very good wrestling. His leg kicks and counter striking are a nightmare for almost everyone, and he might have the best takedown defense in the history of the UFC in any weight class. He is definitely old, and he's listed at 37 years old. He is much older than 37. That's just not true. He was a favela kid without paperwork. And when it was time to get paperwork, he literally just made up an age. He made up an age. And he is much older than what it says on the paperwork. Aldo retired, as I mentioned, 2 years ago. He lost to Merab. And essentially that loss took him out of title contention. So he said, forget it. At this point, if I'm not working my way to a title, what am I doing? So he walked away. In those 2 years since he retired, though, he was active. He had 3 boxing matches. 2 of them were wins over winless guys. 1 of them was a draw with Jeremy Stevens. What sucks for Aldo is that he lost to Merab with his back against the cage, meaning he didn't get beat up. He was just held against the cage. He defended 16 takedowns. Every single takedown he defended, but he couldn't fully get his striking going because of all of that. If that fight was at the apex, the way that the apex judges hate wrestling, Jose Aldo might have won that decision. But here we are 2 years later, 2 years older, 2 years rustier, and in a co-main event against a busy killer kind of guy. Aldo is an all-timer. I will be rooting for him. I don't necessarily think he wins this fight. I do think age will matter here, and Martinez should be able to just outwork him. Martinez is not very young either. But I promise you, Jose Aldo is in his 40s. He is not in his 30s. Jose Aldo was also the favorite when this opened, and he is now the dog. So the betting trend is on the Jonathan Martinez side. I do think Jonathan Martinez wins this fight, but I'm not going to bet on this fight. I have too much respect and too much love for Jose Aldo, and I would absolutely love if the King of Rio finished Jonathan Martinez in a giant arena full of people screaming his name. I love this dude, and I will be rooting for him. And then we have the main event of the evening. Is this a star-studded main event? No, it's just not. It just isn't. This isn't the giant main event, but we just had an insane card. The pay-per-view before that was insane. UFC 302 is insane. UFC 303 is insane. Saudi Arabia has a great main event. So we're working with what we got, and I actually don't mind this fight. Because Alexandre Pantoja just defended his belt. He's now looking to defend it for the second time. And we might actually get some longevity out of a few of these belts instead of the constant changing of the guard. We got Alexandre Pantoja taking on somewhat new to the UFC, Steve Erceg. Alexandre Pantoja loves to just walk forward and go to work. He's got good power. He gives damage, but he also has fantastic grappling with good control and ground and pound. His striking is pretty formulaic. Right? He sticks to the basics. He doesn't take too many risks, but it is effective. And when it's combined with power and pressure, he can have some success. He's incredibly durable. And the only people who have really been able to beat him did it with wrestling and control. He's coming off his first title defensive win. His first title defense in a win over Brandon Royval, where he had 8 takedowns. 8 takedowns in that fight. And he's taking on Genius Bar employee Steve Erceg. This guy's a stick grappler who attacks very quickly and snatches most things up in scrambles. His striking is quickly improving, and he does have nice calf kicks, and he has picked up the volume lately. He has a very wide stance with limited head movement. He does have a nice jab that he pumps out while moving forward. Even with his recent striking success, I think it is safe to categorize him as a grappler. He moves very fluidly. He sees his opportunities on the ground. He's coming off his first finish win in the UFC where he slugged it out with Matt Schnell and knocked him out clean. And the flyweight division is a bit of a mess right now. There's a bunch of losses and inactivity riddling the top 10. No one has benefited more from that than pizza delivery boy Steve Erceg. He has 3 fights in the UFC, none of them being wins over anybody in the top 10, and yet here he is in a main event title fight. I do give him a hard time with his unassuming looks. Pizza delivery boy, the IT guy. I mean, it's unfortunate that this is the picture that they use. It is unfortunate. But even though I give him a little bit of flack for how unassuming he looks, he is good. He is a very skilled fighter who could absolutely sneak out a win here. He's an underrated grappler. We just saw he's also willing to get into a firefight on the feet. Ultimately, I do think Pantoja is going to win. I think it looks exactly like Pantoja's fight with Royval, the fight that he just won, with a whole bunch of takedowns. Right now, he's a 2-1 favorite, and that seems fair, given the experience, given the path to victory, given everything that he's accomplished. I think Alexandre Pantoja turns into a Nurmagomedov, wrestles his way to a win, but we're going to learn a lot about Steve Erceg on Saturday night. Guys, that is the breakdown. And before I ask you to become a premium member, I'm going to ask you to send us some mail. This is the address if you want to send something. The point of this is to showcase our premium members, showcase our audience. If you have a small business and you want to send the shirt, I'll wear the shirt. If you want to send a letter, we will read the letter. For every single pay-per-view, we film a vlog and we do mail day during the vlog where we get the mail, we read the letters, we eat the foods. I had that spicy, somebody sent some hot sauce that really, I felt that for 3 days. But we also got some barbecue sauce last time out. That was delicious. Point being, let us showcase you. Send us some stuff. We'll read it. We'll wear it. We'll eat it. All of that on the vlogs. Every single pay-per-view. Here is the address if you want to send something. We also ask that you become a premium member. Not only is it the best way to support us and what we're doing, you also get a ton for it. It is the greatest value in this space without question. You're going to get picks, bets, tools, and round line leads. You're going to get the line movement tracker, opening odds, current odds, win probability, and line movement for every fighter on every card. You're going to get the detailed data, metrics, and analytics, 38 columns of information that you can use to find your spots. You're going to get the best DraftKings ownership projections in the game. And they're going to be preloaded into the DraftKings optimizer that you can use to build DraftKings fantasy lineups. All of this and so much more. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. It is only $10. You're also going to get Artem breaking down the PFL, the regional shows. You're going to get the Pick GPT. This is the artificial intelligence that is picking fights based off of data, and we are then using those picks and that data to make bets and find spots. Everything I mentioned, all the things I didn't mention, one low price package at $10 a month. WeWantPicks.com. Just click Become a Member at the top.